Not the best idea.
Probably. You sent me that photo.
Probably.
Yeah.
Awesome, yeah.
I agree. Strong.
All right. Are you ready?
Well, probably want to clear my buzzer for me.
If you insist.
Just give me all the points. For everything. Sure.
Well, if you know this first toss, we'll get some points. If you don't, yes, you don't. Here's toss one. The catalyst FEPDP assists in targeting these structures for oxidation with extremely predictable selectivity based on sterics and electronics. The oxygen rebound mechanism explains the insertion of an oxygen atom between one of these entities. The use of a donor atom or an end-on template allows the targeting of one of these entities at the meta position. Because D0 centers such as scandium-3 or lutetium-3 do not be oxidized, they instead undergo a concerted process that breaks and forms a metal ligand bond as well as one of these bonds. These bonds are oxidized by the platinum chloride catalyzed show of the system. These bonds can coordinate to a metal through an agnostic interaction. Guided and innate mechanisms can be used to affect the selectivity of these bonds for activation or functionalization, which monooxygenases target and replace with hydroxyl groups. The 10 points saying these unreactive bonds that, like carbon-carbon bonds, are found in alkanes.
Carbon-hydrogen bonds.
That is correct. Here's your bonus. In addition to demarcating colonies and zones of influence in Greater Syria, this agreement granted France control over the large swath of what is now Turkey, each, named a secret agreement between the French and British governments that demarcated the eastern boundary of the state of Lebanon, Sykes-Picot. Following the Sykes-Picot agreement, the UK and France partitioned former Ottoman territories into this type of territory, supervised by the League of Nations, including one for Syria, Iraq, and Palestine.
The League of Nations mandate.
In 1937, a Syrian district named for this city seceded from Syria and became Turkey's Hatay province.
Alexandria.
That's 30 points. Here's toss-up 2. A chapel on this island contains a pillar whose design shows vines winding around its column and stone dragons gnawing at its base, reminiscent of the Norse world tree. Legend holds that an apprentice mason sculpted that pillar on this island while his master was away researching its design, leaving the master to kill the apprentice out of jealousy. Over 100 mysterious carvings of a pagan figure known as the Green Man decorate the aforementioned chapel on this island. This island developed a timber roof truss known as hammer beam during the Middle Ages, exemplified by a royal hall built by Henry Gebel and Hugh Herland. A branch of Gothic architecture native to this island featured fan vaults sewn for the cone-like shape of their ribs. The heavy use of long and narrow windows called lancets in one region Britain. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
It's just Britain. Yeah. Here's your bonus. The protagonist of a novel, invents a story about this. Sorry, what? Oh, okay, I see what's happening. Okay. The protagonist of a novel invents a story about his family to get a ferryman to investigate a wrecked steamboat named for this author, for 10 points each. Named this author, whom Mark Twain claimed set the world in love with dreams and phantoms, and had so large a hand in making Southern character that he is in great measure responsible for the Civil War.
Scott.
Yeah. The Wreck of the Walter Scott is a set piece in this Mark Twain novel whose narrator travels on a raft with the escaped slave Jim.
Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Indeed. Twain's assault on romanticism continues in the next section of the novel, in which Huck looks at crayon pictures with titles like "And art thou gone? Yes, thou art gone, alas," by this unseen character. A description is acceptable.
Crayon. The dude.
Who do you got?
The dude.
No, it's Emmeline Grangerford.
Oh, the girl who's, not visible.
You got 20 points. Toss up 3. 2 answers required. Clement of Alexandria was said to have introduced the convention of naming of these two groups separately for the purposes of scolding them conjointly in an 1888 treatise by Thomas Wentworth Higginson titled For Them. These groups perpetually pass into one another like fluid that hardens to solid and solid that rushes to fluid, in a passage stating that they represent two sides of the great radical dualism. The claim that there is no mind distinctive to one of these groups, just as there is no liver, is founded in an 1898 study of the economic relation between these groups as a factor in social evolution. A long essay originally serialized in The Dial, under a title describing a great lawsuit involving these two groups, is titled for one of them in the 19th century. Margaret Fuller Sharp,
Men and Women. women.
You
in
solved the
the
riddle.
19th century. I'm solving a lot of riddles in this game.
Here's your bonus. This text uses the term symbolic universe to describe a set of traditions that make up the symbolic totality of the institutional order. And what's each? The argument that knowledge is based on linguistic representations of patterns arising from the roles that people take on within society is central to what 1966 book on the sociology of knowledge. It's called The Social Construction of Reality. Peter Berger and Thomas Luckman's The Social Construction of Reality claims that the growth of specialized knowledge outpaces the growth of general knowledge because of this process that Emil Durkheim examined in society, and Adam Smith illustrated with the example of a food factory. Division of labor. Yes. Part 1 of The Social Construction of Reality focuses on the foundations of knowledge within this conceptual framework, which is the subject of a book on its practice by Michel de Certeau and a critique by Henri Lefebvre.
Say it.
Everyday life.
Okay.
You got 10 points. So 4. Historian Thomas Fearer chronicled the timeline of this event in his work Political Violence in the Periphery, which uses eyewitness accounts like the Secretary of State report from Franklin Atwood. Despite the death of toll to his people, one country's leader issued an order prohibiting the church from holding masses for those killed in this event, and concealed the discovery of corpses found scattered on the rocks of the Artibonite River. An international inquiry into this event was later demanded by that leader, staying over dissent, but he quickly settled for $750,000 indemnity. This event was followed the next year by a campaign called El Desalojo, or eviction, which forced thousands to flee from the Cibao region. The central bloody 5-day period of this event is often dubbed El Corte, or the cutting. For 10 points, name this 1937 incident carried out by the army of Rafael Trujillo. Yeah.
Paris Massacre.
Paris Massacre. Here's your bonus. This event, oh, sorry. That was the topic. Here's some bad potential. Here's your bonus. The main theme of this piece was likely borrowed from Mes du Deuxième Tome by André Rasson for 10 points each. Name this piece that consists of a ground-based theme plus 20 variations and a final contrapuntal section. Its ground-based theme is first staged in the pedals and begins C, G, E flat, F.
So the Passacaglia by Bach.
I will have to.
It's the like prelude and Passacaglia. It's like it's like there's like a continuous Passacaglia that Bach wrote for organ in C minor.
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
The C minor is what I mean.
Yeah.
The ground bass in G.S. Passacaglia and fugue is an example of this musical device. A motif that repeats incessantly throughout a piece. Its name comes from the Italian for stubborn.
Ostinato.
The organ music of Bach and many others was heavily popularized in the United States by this British-born organist who performed weekly radio programs from Harvard's Busch-Weisinger Museum in the 40s and 50s. Fox. Say again? Fox. No, it's E. Howard Biggs.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Wait. You only get one. Okay.
Oh well.
Myers and Meyer give you the notes. They should tell you.
Yeah.
Look, man, I just read.
That's like they shouldn't. I mean, also like they just shouldn't require that. Yeah.
No.
Oh well.
Here's toss-up 5. This event might be described as a remote but inevitable result of the art of printing, according to a writer who declared that he started in life with this event and lived, alas, to see the end of it in the essay On the Feeling of Immortality in Youth. An officer explains the purpose of this event by pointing to an underbitten girl leading a heifer in a section of a poem that recalls the enthusiasts of this event, seeing it as a pleasant exercise of hope and joy. The solitary voices its author's view by expressing disappointment and disgust over this event in the poem The Excursion, whose author had an affair with Annette Milan during it. An inquiry concerning political justice was written in response to this event by William Godwin, whose wife, Mary Wollstonecraft, responded to a document. That's good. Here's your bonus. A simple consequence of this theorem is that if the Lagrangian does not depend on the position coordinate, then the conjugate momentum in that direction is constant for networks each. Given this theorem named for a female German mathematician who states that every global continuous symmetry of the system generates a kinetic quantity. Yeah, for any classical mechanical Lagrangian, the equations of motion will also remain unchanged, but the extra term is added It can be expressed as this operator applied to some function f. I guess I'll prompt.
This operator, the time derivative.
Yeah. In contrast to its Hamiltonian counterpart, Lagrangian mechanics is scaled down to the vector space, which is defined by the generalized coordinates only, rather than by both the coordinates and the velocity space.
That's a
Nuance and phase space.
No, it's called configuration space.
Oh no, phase space is the one that does have.
Yeah.
You get 20 points. Toss of 6. These compounds are reacted with off-felt dialdehyde before quantification via HPLC. A complex formed from the molybdate and pyrogallol red can be used to detect these compounds. A method for quantifying these compounds is the most common use of a reagent originally meant for quantifying phenolic compounds such as gallic acid. Many assays for the concentration of these compounds rely on the fact that, like blue red, they complex with copper 2 ions to form a colored complex. In one technique, bands containing these compounds are visualized using the red Ponceau S stain. Kumasi blue stain
Stains proteins.
Postmodern philosophy's use of this word's adjectival form is prefigured by Walter Benjamin's reference to this sort of messianic power. And my speech. Identify this attribute that names a type of theology introduced by John Caputo that focused on God's instability and a type of thought advocated by Gianni Fattimo that avoids the claims to certainty made in metaphysics. Weak. Caputo wrote about this thinker's religion without religion in a book titled For His Prayers and Tears. Caputo's book about postmodernism and the church, What Would Jesus Deconstruct, is titled for a method this French thinker advanced in of grammatology, Derrida. The phrase weak messianic power appears in this Benjamin essay, which compares materialist perspectives on the title subject to the mechanical turf, and it imagines an angel with its face turned toward the past.
It's on the philosophy of history.
That is correct. Point. Class of 7. The ineffective use of this type of vehicle was revealed in the Butt report, which led to the development of systems such as G and OBO. Analysis primarily concerning these vehicles that took survivorship bias into account was central to Abraham's
So this is like airplanes.
Give me a second. I'm going to take that, yeah. I can take that.
Yeah.
What's the answer yet?
What please?
I can accept planes as one of the answers. And also, there's like a lot of these that have to do. Oh, sorry. Actually, give me a second before I. Sorry, I have to prompt you.
It's like, I don't know, like fighter planes, military planes.
I'll have to prompt you again.
Bombers?
Yes.
Okay.
Bombers is the sought after
Protests.
What?
Protests. He said fighters.
Fighters and bombers are different things.
Yeah, there are different
You
classes.
said military planes.
I heard fighter. I mean, did he not
He
say?
said fighter planes,
did say
military
fighter
planes.
But those are all the same thing. Like,
No,
No,
fighter
no.
planes are different things.
Whatever.
Um,
It's not going to matter.
I mean,
moderate.
we can note the protest and resolve it if it matters. So I don't. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to give you a bonus. Because it is seemingly about everything, this novel is often discussed in relation to its author's goal to write a book about nothing held together by style alone, 10 points each. Name this unfinished novel that an author worked on obsessively for the last 10 years of his life in the process of accumulating notes from over 1,500 books on topics such as horticulture and astronomy, and collecting 8 volumes of questions that he planned to release as its second volume.
Wait. Is this the thing from the month that key to
Oh, yeah.
the key to all of
No, it's Bouvard and Picochet. This author satirized bourgeois cliches in his dictionary of received ideas, which he appended to Bouvard and Picochet. He visited Carthage to write his novel Salambo. Flaubert, yeah. Flaubert's process for the novel is discussed in the chapter on multiplicity from this author's novel, 6 Memoirs for the Next Millennium. This author proposed 14 definitions of the title books and why read the classics.
that sounds right.
It's Italic Calvino. You get 10 points. And toss of 8.
So what the protest I've noted is that fighters should not have been prompted as it was different with bombers, and I wrote that Planes prompt, better planes, military planes prompt, bombers correct. And that's what
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Toss it. The use of the phrase looking at her bitch kitty face is in the opening lines of this poem is a celebrated example of Mary Jo Bain's stylized 2012 translation. Tennyson's claim in Locksley Hall that a sorrow's crown of sorrow is remembered in happier things refers to a line from this poem's fifth section. In that section of this poem, a woman describes a love that can quickly seize the gentle heart and releases no beloved from loving. By borrowing this poem's line, and over our heads the hollow seas closed up, the narrator underscores his failure to explain this poem's passage about Ulysses to Piccolo in Primo Levi's If This Is a Man. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow translated this poem's final line as, "Thence we came forth to re-behold the stars." This poem is narrated... Prompt.
Not good, so.
Yep. This poem's narrator encounters a lion, a she-wolf, and a leopard in its opening section, which begins in the dark forest midway through life's journey. The lion abandoned all those people and here comes from for 10 points, the first part of Dante's Divine Comedy. Here's a bonus. The founder of this dynasty was the last ruler of the year of the 5 emperors, and this dynasty's fall from power was followed by the crisis of the 3rd century. Templates each named this Roman dynasty whose emperors included Caracalla and Heliopolis. Yeah, the reign of the Severan dynasty was interrupted by this Berber who arranged the assassination of Caracalla and succeeded him as emperor. It's Macrinus. Macrinus was the first emperor to have ascended from this position, whose order was nominally in charge of the force protecting the emperor. During the reign of Tiberius, Sejanus essentially ruled Rome from this position.
Commander of the Praetorian Guard. Prefect.
Yes. That is 20 points. Toss of 9. America's leading industrial producer of this element has developed an ultra-strong alloy of it called micromail. Per alkaline rocks are oversaturated with sodium and potassium oxides with respect to the oxide of this element. The saturation index of this element is one of the 3 parameters commonly used to classify granite. Alloying with this element is a common method to stabilize the alpha phase of titanium because this element raises the beta transist temperature. On many 3-component triangular phase diagrams of igneous rocks, the formula corresponding to 100% of this element includes the minerals kyanite, andalusite, and sillimanite. The presence of this element along with silicon and oxygen is one of the defining features of feldspar. Rubies and sapphires are comprised of corundum, aluminum. Here's your bonus. This computer scientist illustrated the importance of consensus for distributed systems in his paper, The Byzantine General's Problem. Named his 2013 Turing Award laureate, his work provides the theoretical foundation of the Paxos consensus solving protocol. You got it. Yeah, that's Leslie Lamport. Lamport developed an algorithm for partially ordering computational events based on this variable. Clock synchronization algorithms are used to keep this variable consistent between nodes of distributed systems. An algorithm made for this institution can be used to synchronize system clocks. This institution's sockets are an API for inter-process communication that originated in Unix.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. 20. Toss up 10. Composer and type of piece required. In one of these pieces, the second movement in G sharp minor begins with the first violin solo played fortissimo and entirely on the G string for 12 bars. The last of these pieces had all 6 movements in E flat minor, all played without breaks between them, and all played adagio or adagio molto. These pieces are the subject of the book Music for Silence Voices by Wendy Lesser. The 13th of these pieces in E flat minor is the only one in a single movement and requires the players to strike their instruments at certain points. Another of these pieces in C minor quotes the Jewish theme from the composer's Charles Simich's claim that somewhere in the city of New York there are 4 or 5 still unknown objects that belong together describes the method of this artist, which was profiled in Simich's Dinosaur Alchemy for 10 points each. Named this American artist best known for creating shadow boxes filled with found items. Shadow boxes. You got it, it's Joseph Cornell. Cornell's boxes were influenced by the ready-mades of this French Dada artist, which included an advanced with a broken arm. Yeah. Cornell's boxes were also a response to East European artist collages and assemblages, which this man called Merritt's pictures. So yeah,
Ball.
it's Kurt Schwitters. 10 points.
We have a score check.
Alright, it's halftime.
I have
Go
scored
ahead, yes.
280 minus 5.
So we're giving Grell the half,
Half
guys.
is the best.
Okay, task 11. This model can be extended by the extreme independent particle model to approximate deformation from a hard sphere. A crude harmonic oscillator potential in this model can be refined with a rounded well potential proportional to the inverse quantity 1 plus the decaying exponential, and that refinement is named for Woods and Saxon. This model assumes that the spin-orbit coupling is always analogous to JJ coupling, such that the individual particle L and S numbers have it vectorially. The strongest success of this model is its explanation of the high neutron cross-section, a natural abundance of isotopes and isotones with 28, 50, or other magic numbers of nucleons, thus improving on the older liquid drop model.
The Bethel Weizsäcker.
Nope. Eugene Wigner, J. Hans Jensen, and Maria Goldberg-Mayer developed the 10 points one model of the nucleus, which proposes that nucleons fill up energy states similar to electrons in atomic orbitals. That's the shell.
Shell model.
Oh, shell.
Okay.
Woo.
That's right.
Class 12.
Yeah.
In the passage that introduces this situation, the author discusses how things can have either market price or fancy price, while that which is above price has dignity. An essay in the 1986 book examines how holding one another responsible and entering relations of reciprocity, such as friendship, perform the title act of creating this situation. A statement that makes use of this thought experiment is the four formulas, following the formula of humanity and the formula of autonomy. This thought experiment, which titles a book by Christine Korsgaard, finds a systematic union of different rational beings under common laws. That is not correct. We should construct our maxims as if we are legislators in this state according to one formulation of the categorical imperative. The 10 points name this hypothetical polity discussed in Immanuel Kant's groundwork, in which people do not treat one another as means.
Kingdom of Ends.
Kingdom of Ends.
Correct. Here's your bonus. This man articulated the preferential option for the poor in the 1971 book. For 10 points each, name this Peruvian religious philosopher who teaches at Notre Dame. His 1971 book coined a term for a progressive Catholic movement.
Oh, this is the guy who I think coined the term liberation theology.
Gutierrez?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Gutierrez?
Say again?
Gutierrez?
That's right.
Yeah.
Gutierrez was one of the founders of this Catholic theology, which originated in Latin America and held that social justice was a crucial part of church doctrine.
Liberation theology.
Liberation theology was opposed by this conservative congregation in the Vatican, which was led by Joseph Ratzinger, the Crucial Vatican 16. It descended from the Roman Inquisition.
So, Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faithful.
That's 30.
What are policy?
Here is Toss of 13.
Good work.
After two characters in this novel insultingly call each other Elvis and refugee stick insect, they are repeatedly referred to as Their Excellencies Ambassador E. Pelvis and Ambassador S. Insect. The contrasting class backgrounds of two characters in this novel are illustrated by the objects they get stuck up their noses as children, a glass bead and a green gram. While two characters in this novel are running away from home because their mother called them millstones around her neck, their boat is capsized by a floating log and their passenger drowns. A Rhodes Scholar in this novel returns home to work in his family's Paradise Pickles and Preserves factory.
Good night, children.
No.
Sorry.
In a pivotal scene of this novel, a child who can't stop singing in a musical performance is taken out to the lobby where he is molested. This novel is mainly set in the city of Yemen and chronicles the lives of egg twins Rachel and Esther. Their voice names may be novel by Ellen Dr. Gold. Okay, that's time.
The god of small
Small
things.
All the small things.
Yeah.
Toss of
Sorry.
14.
So you have any other
Well, Indian novel about pickles.
Carl Breidenbach theorized that a prince of this group was identical to the mysterious Don Luis de Velasco, who accompanied founders on the Ahakan mission. Two men had to lean on the shoulders of a ruler of this group to place a crown on his head during a farcical coronation set up to turn him into a vassal. A warning given by a boy to Richard Case helped one town escape a massacre that warriors from this group began by walking into homes pretending to sell provisions and then grabbing available weapons. Leaders of this group, called Wero-Wanse, were subordinated to a ruler based in their capital of Wero-Komoko. This group was decimated by reprisals after the Opachakuno led it in attacks on settlements such as Henricus. The 10 points named this group of Algonquin American Indian tribes in Virginia organized into a confederate.
Powhatan's Confederacy.
Nice.
We're Wakanoko, I should have put that earlier.
Here's your bonus. The axes of these diagrams represent reaction coordinates, while the top left and bottom right represent the reactants and products, 10 points each. Name these diagrams that effectively serve as projections of potential energy surfaces. The transition state is represented on these diagrams as moving along or perpendicular to a diagonal.
Yeah.
What do you got? This is called a Moore-O'Farrell-Jenks plot. The rules for a transition space movement along a Moore-O'Farrell-Jenks plot are effects named for this statement.
That's a Hammond postulate, like that Hammond postulate? Okay.
Moore-O'Farrell-Jenks plots were developed to discuss the mechanisms of this class of reactions that come from E1 and E2
Oh,
varieties.
eliminations.
You get 20.
Nice.
Toss 15. A philological scandal that arose in Britain after the 1970 publication of a book titled For a Sacred One of These Things and the Cross ruined the academic career of John Marco Allegro. The man who pioneered the ethnological study of these things, R. Gordon Wasson, wrote an 1868 monograph explaining his theory that the Vedic soma was made from a type of them. The blasted landscapes preferred by one of these things stand in for the possibility of life in the cracks of the global political economy in a 2015 anthropological study written by one of the leading scholars of the Anthropocene. That examination of the possibility of life in capitalist ruins is titled From One of These Things at the End of the World and contains Anna Singh's writings on a species of them known as the Matsutake, which was the first living thing to grow in the wake of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings. 10 points
A pioneer species?
that is not correct. -5. For 10 points in these organisms, whose connection to culture is studied by ethnomycology.
Mushrooms? Yes.
Okay. Here is your bonus. One of these texts created by Charles Cotton eclipsed an earlier one that likely inspired the wording of Edmund Forge's letter in King Lear. 10 points each. Name the sort of text published by John Florio in 1603, from which Shakespeare lifted a speech in which Gonzalo imagines a commonwealth where no kind of traffic and no name of magistrate would be allowed.
History Chronicle? A History Chronicle.
These are English translations of Montaigne's essays.
Okay.
Montaigne's of Cannibals inspired that utopian speech by Gonzalo in this Shakespeare play, in which it is followed by the spirit Ariel luring the stranded lords to sleep.
The Tempest.
Yeah. This critic edited an edition of Florio's translation that was published under the title Shakespeare's Montaigne in 2014. This theorizer of Renaissance self-fashioning applied his method of new historicism to the Shakespeare biography Will in the World. Yeah. He gets one. Toss up. Should we do a sport check at 15?
I have 305.50.
Okay.
Can I propose an experiment, Chicago B?
How about no?
I
No,
think yes, because
no.
it's a disaster every
Awesome.
time we shake hands, and I think you guys should walk in a line
Okay.
down while we stand
Stop
up and
doing
stay
that
still.
and listen to this question. Toss of 16. Research by Michael Borabay et al. in 2004 conclusively debunked a theory of the creation of this entity that had previously been discredited by the Wistar Committee. In the 1999 book, The River, Edward Cooper expanded on a theory about the creation of this entity, first published in the 1982 Rolling Stone article written by Tom Curtis. The scientist who developed a rule that attempted to explain altruism, W.D. Hamilton, died from an ulcer after contracting malaria while investigating the theory that this entity had been accidentally created by a team led by Hillary Krauske, a KGB propaganda campaign which was
Like HIV? Like,
Here's your bonus. The Belgian entrepreneur Georges Nagelmakers founded a company named after these things after seeing them in use on a trip to America, where they had been invented by Theodore Tuttle Woodruff. Then what's each? In these things that in Europe were called wagon lids.
I don't know.
Carts.
Say again?
Carts.
No. These are sleeping cars.
Oh,
In 1883, Nagelmakers Compagnie Internationale des Wagenlids opened this luxury train line that connected Paris to Istanbul.
the
Oh, the
Orient
Orient
Express.
Express.
The Orient Express.
This Munich-based luxury line operator was founded in 1916 and rose to become the CIWL's biggest competitor in the interwar period. Its livery was dark red in contrast to CIWL's dark blue, and its logo displayed a stylized red M above a six-spoke wheel on an oval crest.
No idea.
The German.
Something that
Munich?
starts with M.
Munich maybe? Like
Okay.
Munich Express.
It's called Mitropa.
Damn it, if I had heard Bagoli
toss
pronounced
17.
correctly, I would have known.
You got 10 points on that one, sure. Toss of 17. According to the most fulsome source on this man's life, he made a conquest by presenting a young boy as a rightful heir to ambush two men who are not princes nor even of prince's stock. A legend claims that he was prophesied to die by his horse, causing him to have his horse.
Oleg? Prince? The primary color.
Yeah, Prince of Novgorod. Here's your bonus. This dish originated as a meat, typically pork, that was marinated in wine and garlic for consumption by sailors. 10 points each. Named this spicy dish whose name derives from a phrase meaning wine with garlic. A version of this dish that arose in Britain typically contains potatoes, which the original version usually does not, despite its name containing the word meat potato.
I think it's Vindaloo.
Okay.
Vindaloo?
That's right.
Nice.
Vindaloo arose in the small, rich, formerly Portuguese-controlled state of modern-day India, but was annexed along with Danao and Dio in 1961's Operation DJ.
Go on.
The British Bangladeshi version of Vindaloo was invented in the curry shops along this street in London. This home to many Bangladeshis, especially from the region of Sylhet.
Brick Lane?
30 points.
Nice. Good.
Indian food!
That's great.
Here's toss up 18. In a novel by this author, the protagonist's husband has a separate bedroom, wants to move to Brazil, and wants his son Junior to learn that sex is a grand joke, all of which are suggestive of his homosexuality. After taking refuge from a storm in a church, the protagonist of a novel by this author meets her future husband, a preacher Pleasant Green. In a novel by this author, a woman shatters her husband's heirloom cup after suspecting him of an affair with a woman whom she had encountered at a rooftop cafe in Chicago in the novel's first part, Encounter. This author's friend Carl Van Beckett inspired the writer Hugh Wentworth in the novel, whose ambiguous ending suggests that the protagonist may have caused a woman's fatal fall from a window. This creator of the half-Danish Helga Crane wrote a novel in which Irene Redfield encounters her light-skinned childhood friend Claire Kendry, who is married a racist white man. Quicksand and Passing are by for 10 points, but female writer of the Harlem Renaissance.
Passing by Larson?
Yeah, that's it.
Here's your bonus. The Surah al-Ma'idah, or the table, which forbids eating animals killed by blunt force, is the source of a dispute over whether stuffed animals then slaughtered by this method can then be eaten. For 10 points each, name this method of slaughter that includes the animal's throat being cut swiftly with a sharp blade, separating the trachea and both sets of jugular veins and carotid arteries while avoiding the spinal cord.
I mean, this is like Zabiha. It's like Zabiha halal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Zabiha slaughter conforms with Islamic dietary law, which is described by this Arabic word that means permissible and is contrasted with a Quran. Foods that are neither halal nor haram are placed in this third category of doubtful or suspect foods.
Makruh.
Makruh.
Yeah, makruh.
It's mashru.
No, that one. Oh.
You get 20 points.
Foods? Okay.
Your first game out.
I didn't know it. That's fine.
Here's toss of 19. Two of Luca della Robbia's sons joined a group led by this man, whom they depicted on several bronze medallions. The most recognizable portrait of this man, which shows him in profile above a Latin inscription, was painted by an artist born Baccio della Porta. Like Dante, this man both appears in Raphael's La Disputa and is the namesake of a style of X-shaped folding chair made of interlocking pieces of curved wood. Fra Angelico's fresco version of the Annunciation is found a few yards from the rooms that are preserved as this man's private chambers. This man, who led a group known as the Weepers, inspired him.
Savonarola.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Savonarola chair? Okay.
I don't know what that is, but that's a thing apparently. Here's your bonus. Mutations in one of these proteins may cause SCA35 or acral peeling skin syndrome. 10 points each. Name the type of enzyme that is inhibited by monodansyl cadaverine. When activated by retinoic acid, one of these enzymes performs a modification that causes row A to activate as a G protein. Bring it. It's transglutaminases. Autoantibodies against tissue transglutaminase are a marker of this disease that results in gluten intolerance and blunted villi in the small intestine. Yeah. TGM2 was found in these cells that primarily make up the stratum-based basale or basal. The Hakat cell line is derived from these cells.
So are we still in the small intestine? Is that what?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The
Here you go. These are called keratinocytes. Toss blast. In one text, a sea god prophesies the life of Mongan after claiming that, to a man of this name, the ocean is a flowery plain. The proverb, he who will be chief, let him be a bridge, comes from a tale about a king of this name, who, taking advantage of his massive size, allowed his army to cross the top.
Okay, so this is Bran, right?
That's simple.
Yeah.
Here's your bonus. One of this man's plays calls for the playing of a medley of sounds, including wind, waves, galloping horses, and train whistle, as the stage revolves around the protagonist, following the protagonist's firing. Double speech. Name this American playwright whose only expressionistic play features a bookkeeper named Mr. Zero, who ends up in the Elysian fields after being executed for killing his boss.
No, O'Neill. O'Neill.
Elmer Rice.
Elmer Rice.
Rice is the adding machine, draws on From Morn to Midnight, a play about an unnamed clerk by this country's author, George Kaiser. In the aftermath of World War I, Eugene O'Neill claimed not to be influenced by this country's expressionist movement.
Germany.
Like The Adding Machine, this 1928 expressionist play by Sophie Treadwell centers on an unnamed clerical worker, in this case a young woman who's sent to the electric chair after killing her boss and husband, George.
No.
Secretary. That's delightful. It's called Machinal. That's great.
No, you guys did it. Thank you. This is so much more adult than the way that everyone just sticks their hands all on each other. Sure. Okay.
Well, at least we got some points in the second.
So now we're going upstairs to 246 Play Northwestern.